you've been open in your videos about having Asperger's syndrome. Do you want to tell us about some of the challenges that you've encountered because of that and how you've dealt with them?
Yeah. It's so I'm high functioning Asperger's, or ASD. I think ASD is the more popular term now, but most people in the world don't know what ASD means. So I just stick with Asperger's because most people are familiar to some extent what that is. And it's, I don't know of any situations where people develop Asperger's. As far as I know, everybody is born with it. I was born with it. As far as I can kind of tell, it's just a different nature of a person. It's not so much a deficit. I think it's got more to do with being built differently, completely built differently. Neurodiversity is a neurodiversity as opposed to neurotypical. And, I lived my whole life, just not knowing anything about that. I was born in the 70s, and I was born in a very small town in the 70s. And just was not a lot of resources to even identify what was going on. It was clear that I was always on the outside of things. In my report cards, in my parent-teacher interactions and like reporting and whatnot, and all of that kind of stuff, I was always really outside, and it was very difficult for me to integrate. And I always felt on the outside. I was just like, whoa, I feel like, I'm in a fishbowl and everybody's kind of just staring at me, but like it's a weird feeling.
Yeah.
And I used to say a lot of really inappropriate things, not necessarily like, sexist or racist or anything like that. Just like straight up inappropriate things. I just didn't know the difference. I couldn't evaluate the difference between a lot of those things. Mm-hmm. I'd think I was being funny or personable or whatever. And it's like, no, that's like, never say that.
So you weren't recognizing where the social lines were?
Well, I didn't understand that I didn't understand comedy. I didn't understand that I didn't understand sarcasm. I didn't understand that there was social cues and like the manner by which people move in accordance with like their actions in accordance with their speech and whatnot have a great deal to do with what they mean and what they're trying to communicate. I just didn't know any of that. In my mid 30s, it was recognized by a neighbor. And that neighbor was also a high functioning ASD person who worked with ASDs and integrating them or helping them to attempt to integrate into society. He was part of this program. He's like, I think you're ASD. I think you're an ASB. I'm like, what is that? And he explained it. I'm like, you have a compelling argument. And he's like, come by the place and you can go through an assessment. And, they had a person there that was like a psychologist or whatever, and they do full, like legitimate assessments. And apparently, like immediately, they're like, oh yeah, I could tell you were ASD right away. I'm like, oh, interesting. I don't know. The things you don't know. You don't know what you don't know, right?
Right.
So from at that point, it was weird. I always knew that I was different. I always knew that I was on the outside always. And it was a problem. Like it was a problem that I wanted to somehow fix or whatever. Like I just didn't know I didn't know what it was and I didn't know where to start and I didn't know what to do, whatever. So that experience of finally knowing what was going on was sort of it had a duality to it. On one side, I'm like, oh, there's something definitely wrong with me. I don't really want to tell people this. This was back then. This is like 36 or 37, something like that. And, but also it set me on a path to like trying to understand it. And that was extremely helpful. like extremely, extremely helpful because, you become more effective if you understand what your obstacles are, or if you understand the environment. So thinking about being ASD as like an environment that I operate in, and thinking about all of the factors of that environment, you have the person operating in with the conditions of ASD, but you also have the neurotypical world. So who is the neurotypical world? How do they function? What are the things that are important to them? What are their values? And how do they perceive the world? And what is meaningful to them? And through really taking a look at all of that stuff, I was able to kind of I was able to identify all those things, but also sort of internalize them. Um, so I get what sarcasm is now, and I can work with sarcasm, and even quite a bit of sarcasm could be maybe funny or whatever, or I could be like, ooh, offside, like not okay.
Mhm.
There is still things like that that'll just go. I'm like, no idea, didn't catch it at all.
Yeah.
And things like body language, like overt things, like I'm always sort of scanning for it now, just naturally because I went through this period of like really trying to understand it. And it just, after a while, just like playing guitar, like you get the notes under your hand, you get the notes under your finger. So through practice, I was sort of able to internalize a lot more of like how the world functions and maybe how to more effectively interact with it. There is a thing in ASD called masking, and
Mhm.
where it's basically autistic people will just mimic neurotypical traits, and
Okay.
basically act out almost like a script, the way people are in movies, the way people in their social groups might be. If you ever have known a person who kind of adopts the personas of people from films and whatnot, I know a few of those
Hmm.
people who have these overt personas that are based on very obvious like characters from films. I'm like, oh, I'm pretty sure they're ASD.
Interesting. I've never heard of that. So you say that's like their strategy for just
it's
um
it's an unknowing strategy. It's called
okay.
masking,
Yeah.
and how people build their mask, so to speak. It's kind of up to them. It depends how their life unfolds and what they have access to. But a lot of people just they kind of analyze the manner by which the people around them interact, and they kind of spit that back out to people in
Hmm.
order to just inter because they want, everybody, people are just people. They just want to integrate. Everybody wants to be loved and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Um, so it's a coping mechanism, but masking isn't a very healthy one because it doesn't give you any understanding as to like what's going on, and you might be hurting yourself more than you're helping yourself. So
Hmm.
yeah, I think just overall, in terms of that idea, the whole ASD thing, and meeting it and trying to understand it, embracing it, no matter what your challenges are in life, sometimes like leaning into your challenges uh, can provide a unique advantage or a unique perspective or like an opportunity to be disruptive in a space, whatever the case may be. Like I also have like a neuro, like my fingers are tied. So when I move this hand will mirror it. It's called mirror movement.
Hmm.
And using that as an example, it makes playing guitar really, really hard. Like I can't develop on a guitar like a normal person, but it's provided me this opportunity to approach the instrument in a pretty significantly different way, and that leads to having your own kind of sound. Uh, and over the last, I don't know, 10 years or so, I've kind of realized I'm like, oh, like I have a sound, and I tried to understand it more, and I'm like, I think it's because of this, because I have to play different. There's a whole bunch of things that are just I don't have access to in terms of playing or developing on guitar. But I want to develop and I want to press forward. I want to progress just like anybody does, but I have to do it in a different way. So it's forced me on a different path. And once I realized that it could be a potential benefit, I really leaned into it. And same thing with ASD. I'm like, okay, well, what are some of the known advantages of being ASD? Is long periods of focus. I'm like, oh, okay, like I have no problem working straight for 18 hours and never taking a break, not even eating. Not healthy.
Yeah, you don't recommend that to everybody. But.
Yeah, not healthy, but like it is a little bit of a superpower in a way. In a lot of other things, like there's a lot of challenges, but like what are the things that are uniquely an advantage, and how might I be able to leverage them in any kind of challenge that you have? Being 50, that one's interesting because it's like I have a life of experience that to draw on in any situation that I might get into, that I can apply to creative and non-creative things. Does that make me amazing at anything? No, but like there are definitely advantages there. So yeah, what of your challenges might be unique advantages if you approach it from maybe just a different point of view?